The colossal National Education Policy 2020 was proposed on 29th July in the same year. Earlier to this, National Policy on Education (NPE) was proposed in 1986 and modified in 1992. The National Education Policy in 2020 has far more features than expected. The major headline feature has been restoring and renaming the Ministry of Human Resource Development (MHRD) to the Ministry of Education. However, there are some headline points and some key concerns of the new education policy that can be ascertained by answering the basic questions like what are the specific complaints that we all have with our education system that transcends across all age groups, grappling with the basic issue of unemployability, and whether whatever we have been reading in our formative years is at all strongly correlated with our lives. Our examination system has been surviving on the fighting chance where few students hit the jackpot and rest land in the dustbin of history or the footnotes of history. The cornerstone of our education system has been its blinkeredness. Like the young person would either aim to become an engineer, or a medical student, or a management graduate, or a teacher, but very few grasp the responsibilities, the nuances, or anything else related to the profession. The difference between the rhetoric and the reality has been far too many, like liberty to study anything. But one of the realities has been the compartmentalization of the streams. It has been proven over the years that rote learning, collecting degrees, doesn't always yield jobs. There has been a very little connection between what one studies and what one opts for as a profession. In that case, the investment by the state and the parents go waste. Hence, the major flaw in the education system has always been the relevance or the gap that exists between the investment of time, money, emotion, dreams, and aspirations and the resultant effect. Hence, it becomes obvious that one policy cannot fix the problems and the challenges. The best part of the NEP 2020 has been the extension of the right to education from 3 years to 18 years, whereas earlier it was 5 years to 14 years, which means that nursery education has now become the part of RTE, that is the right to education, and the government plans to invest in that. The extension of RTE up to 18 means that up to class 12th would be fully a government expense. It would certainly improve the basic level learning. NEP recommends and encourages the medium of instruction up to class 5 in child's mother language, the language in which the child is comfortable, relates to, and understands better. The limitation that is visible here is that what would have happened to those schools in the metropolis where we have children from all backgrounds. However, this is yet to unravel. One should not discount the fact that English language unites us all. One challenge with the implementation of the national education policy is at the primary level, where it places the burden of primary education on overstretched, underfunded, and under-equipped Anganwadis with not enough resources and with no new proposed resources. Hence, the greater challenge is the challenge of implementation that becomes bigger challenge than the ideas itself. However, NEP has already gathered momentum. Since NEP has already gathered momentum, but the success road is not free from potholes and the speed breakers. A, because of the size and diversity of the country. For example, with 15 lakh schools, 25 crore students, 89 lakh teachers, the sample size of the school education alone is astronomically as big as all outdoors. With this, India becomes the second largest education system to China in the world. Similarly, if we look at Aishe report of 2019, 1,000 universities, 39,931 colleges, 10,725 stand-alone institutions cater to the demands of 3.4 crore odd students. In such stance, there is an expected involvement of the multiple stakeholders at every level. Such involvements would create and ensure the shared responsibility like the state, district, sub-districts, and the block level, including the private sector in a country with strong diversity. Hence, country-wide rolling out of this mega education policy is an Herculean task. National Education Policy Drafting Committee led by K. Kasturi Ranjan has rightly alluded to underfunded education system in India, its bureaucratization. Hence, it lacks capacity for innovation, ramping up, and bioprocess. Another challenge is to bring about revolutionary change in the attitudes of the people running the system at the center, the state, and attitudinal change in the teacher, students, and parents to move away from the rigidity of content-driven, rote learning system to experiential learning and critical thinking. With the existing organizational structures and the available ecosystem, creating shared responsibility and capacity building of thousands of schools and colleges would be a major challenge. However, the government has laid out a very comprehensive roadmap. There have been many regulators in education like UGC, AICTE, NCTE. The new policy combines all these regulators into one regulatory body. The role of the private sector, particularly in dealing with the higher education system, is extremely critical for translating the inclusionary vision of the national education policy. Here we may duly take a note that as much as 70% of higher education institutions, whether in colleges and universities, are run by the private sector. Significantly, the current enrollment of the students in private higher education institutions is roughly 65 to 70%. Evolution of education as an enterprise. Somewhere, the dictum that education should not be profit fails to hold ground. There are so many colleges and universities and institutions that overtly may vouch for not for capitalization, but there exists hidden fees, capitation, cash payments that NEP does not address. Since the private sector fetches the requisite financial capital, resources, and innovation, building regulatory bodies to create workable institutional mechanisms becomes imperative for the policymakers. Recognizing private sectors as level pegging partners and harnessing their contribution in the NEP process can be possibly accomplished only when such regulatory bodies come into existence. Finally, successful rolling out of national education policy would require adequate financial resources for the next few decades. In this regard, the national education policy has stated that to realize the goals of the new policy, the country has to raise public spending on education to 6% of the GDP. The college will have the option to offer both 3 and 4-year undergraduate degrees. Internal assessment will be more robust. In that case, schools will have 2 exams per year instead of 1. But the challenge is the commercialization and the corruption. National education policy hasn't come out with any such policy to tackle the commercialization of education that is becoming rampant day by day. In that case, the lottery of marks has to go. National education policy also doesn't address the undersupply of higher education colleges or universities or institutions. The ambitious project laid by national education policy that by 2035 there will be twice as many Indians in higher education institutions, that is HEI. Today only 26% Indians pursue higher education, whereas by 2035 it would double up to 50%. That means the children currently enrolled in schools would be eligible for HEI by 2035. That means the government at the center and the state level have to increase the supply of higher education phenomenally. For that, the government has to increase the budget from 4.4% to 6% of the total GDP, because the center and the states together, and even that wouldn't be enough. The private sector in that case should be free from government interference and should be more transparent. Enrolling more kids and not expanding the number of schools where the kids could go. The comprehensive evaluation expected to do 360-degree evaluation with bigger classroom bursting at the seams are another major problems that the government has to tackle. Bureaucrats are writing the policies, submitting to politicians who are not teachers either. We need to develop far more teachers and far more classrooms. Yet the most critical challenge before national education policy is building consensus and getting states to own the first omnibus program after 1986. In short, to live up to the expectations raised by national education policy, collective federalism is the answer. Simultaneously, the state government should come forward and take the ownership of the colossal reforms. Thank you.